Hi everyone. On this tutorial I'm going to show you some amazing and really simple technique to make a nice gold coin using only Photoshop 3D capabilities. Starting by watching the design, I made some design in Illustrator because it's easier, but anyone can do it. You can do it in Photoshop the same way. I'm gonna start with this design. And the gray colors here represent some different bevels or cups I will use on the 3D coin. So that's my way of separating it so I can remember what I want to do with each part. So let's start by the sphere itself. Simple gray sphere. I'm going to copy it to Photoshop again. You can do it in Photoshop already, so each one does it his own way. Pasting it here. I'm working on a 2000 by 2000 pixel canvas. I find it comfortable if I'm not going to print it, so it's okay, it's enough size and it will give us a quick render in Photoshop. Okay, so let's start by creating the first 3D layer. I'm selecting the sphere, the circle, and clicking here, new 3D extrusion. It will create a 3D layer inside Photoshop. As you can see here, it's a different layer than the usual Photoshop layer. Here on the top side I can see a top view of this layer, and here I have a few things in the 3D tab. I have the environment, which I will explain later on. Scene, this is the part where I can edit the direction of what I'm seeing, watching it from every direction. Light, by default you have the infinite light. The layer that I have now, which is the sphere, and default camera, which is always brings you back to your initial point. Okay, let's start. Let's take our sphere layer, our circle layer. It had an extrusion on it by default, and I can see the extrusion, right, it's hiding here, right here. You can see in the top view how as I lower the extrusion, it gets thinner and thinner. Okay? I can take the object I'm holding, I can move it back and forth using the Z line. I can move right to left. In my experience, I prefer always starting with the default position. You'll understand why later on. Okay. I'm doing some steps. Okay. So let's move it just a little bit to the back using the Z axis and make it thinner based on what I'm seeing here to about the proportions of a normal medal or coin or something like that. Okay. Now that's it for now. I will go and bring my, you know what, I'll first put the material on it. When clicking layer 1, you can see in the properties panel, inside layer 1 you have a few faces. You see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is the front face, looking at it. It's a front bevel material, that's not important. Extrusion material, which is in the center, the side of the coin, and the back level, it's the behind coin, the behind side. Okay, now let's take this layer and the front face layer and choose a material. Well, let's take all the faces and choose a material. I'm going for gold. I won't be tweaking it too much in the beginning, just giving it this material is enough. Then I want to bring another element from my previous design. Let's take the leaves. I will copy it, send it back to Photoshop, and paste it. It will come as a normal non-3D layer above my 3D layer. Okay, now I'm going again to 3D, new 3D extrusion from selected layer. I get this very big extrusion we don't need. Let's take it much smaller extrusion, something like this, and that's enough. Go back to Photoshop and let's take the last part of my design, which is this part. Oh, something is hiding there. Okay. Taking it, moving it to Photoshop. Again, it will come in a new non-3D layer. This is it, something like this. Okay. Again, new 3D extrusion, same steps again like the last time. Okay. Making it smaller, thinner, something like this is enough. Okay. Now, as you can see on the side on the layers panel, we have 3 3D layers, but they are not on the same layer, on the same 3D world. So what we want to do next is to select all layers, go to 3D, merge 3D layers. It's important to keep all layers or all elements on the default position, so when we mix them all up, they don't get messed up and appear in different angles and sizes and stuff. Merge 3D layers. Okay, so now inside we can see, now I can fold these layers. We have 3 layers in the same world. Okay, as you can see, this layer is showing us the best designer layer. This one is the leaves, and this one is the original circle or coin. Let's send it back, holding these layers. Send it with the Z-axis, send it back, so it reveals the other layers. That's cool. Let's start designing each layer. Let's take, for example, the leaves. Click on it one time. It is selected, as you see, layer 2. These are the leaves. Inside we have again these 5 faces. And the bottom boundary constraint and stuff is not very important. You can disregard that part. Let's take all these 5 faces and give them again the gold default material from Photoshop. Okay, then let's take this layer, the best designer layer, which is layer 3. Again, all 5 faces selected. Let's give them a gold material again. Okay. Now, one thing I always do is I change the environment, which is basically sort of the way of Photoshop to emulate where this coin is placed. So for example, the default is something like this, which are a few lights around the coin, but we can replace it with some better studio looking. So replace texture. Inside the environment pane, you go to IBL, replace texture. Yep. And here I use a file which is freely on Google. You need to use any HDRI file and change it. I will put this one and make it available for you. but you can look up in Google HDRI Studios. There are many free files for you to use. I prefer this one personally. I prefer a dark room. When using gold, I prefer a dark room with some few softboxes, and it gives you perfect results. Oh, let's open this file. As you can see, the lighting changed. Now when I'm inside the environment, I can rotate this part like this and see how it affects my gold. Okay. Let's start by giving some depth to this coin. Let's hold the layer 3, which is this part. Okay. Let's move the light a little, rotate a little bit the light. Okay, that will be something like this, so it's comfortable. Okay. Holding layer 3, we can go to this part where we see the layers and the bevels and the caps. Holding this part, you can adjust the bevel if you want, just like in Photoshop. And you can give it a cap, which is a little more deep, something like this, which is pretty interesting stuff. Let's do this one for now, okay? Okay. Let's make it a little deeper too, so let's choose this layer and next. Okay. Now let's choose the leaves layers. This is it. Okay. Again, go to the caps. Let's give it some nice depth here. As you can see, very interesting. Okay. This is starting to look very interesting. Now we can click on environment, on scene, sorry. And you can start rotating this thing and seeing how it looks like. It's a little too deep, the text. So I'm going to click on it, make it a little more inside. Something like this, more subtle. Let's see now how this looks like. Yep, I think it's a little better. Okay. Okay, that's nice. Okay, one thing we want to add here, I think it will give it a very artistic touch, is to add some bump map on the coin itself. So we will have a place which, part of the coin which will be a little rugged with bumps, and the part of the coin which will be very smooth. So it give it a very nice and interesting look. So I will add the bump map to the circle coin, to the circle part. Click on it once, you see it's layer 1. I click on the front face, which is this part, and on the bump part, I will change to a new texture, okay? Okay, 2000 by 2000, that's fine. Okay. Okay, what we see here is a demonstration of a representation of the front face, which is this circle. And here what we're going to do is a grayscale bump map, which means that every white part is a little bit higher than the dark parts. It's like a 3D grayscale depth map. Let's paint everything here in black. And let's add noise. Okay, something like this. Then I will go to Filter Gallery, Bas Relief. This gives me this style of texture. You can play with it a little bit, make it more sharpness. With its sharpness, we can like something like this. More detailed, less detailed, your choice. I prefer something around these values. You can use 12 on the detail and 4 on smoothness. Of course, this regards the 2000 by 2000 pixel bump map. Okay. Now that we have our bump map, I can do and click on Command S or Control S on a PC, save, and go back to my PC, my coin, and there you go. You have the bump map, which is pretty nice. Now we can play with the intensity of it. We can make it much stronger, and we can make it very, very subtle, something like this, 2 or 3%. I think it's enough to make it nicer. Okay, let's add some bevel to this coin too. Holding the layer, I go to this part again, where you see the bevels and caps, and I will choose something like this, I think. And now we'll see what it does. It does this type of shape all around the element, depends on the width of the bevel. You see, now this is very, very strong. We need a very slight width, maybe 1%. Let's make it like this, maybe 2%. Yeah, I think that's nice and that's enough. Another thing is I want to take the sleeves, click on this square here, which is the scale, and make it a little bit bigger. Same I'm going to do with this layer. Click on the square, a little bit bigger, and put it inside, back inside a little bit. Okay, something like this. Okay, now this is starting to look really, really cool. We didn't render it yet, but we're getting that, don't worry. Okay, now let's go and see the lighting. Like this, infinite light. I will use the default light for this tutorial, but because it's enough. I take the lighting, adjust the direction I want to use. Then I'm going to blur the shadows, soften the shadows, so I like to get this type of effect. And now if you want to get a nice reflection, you can go to Environment, and here you have reflections. You can add some reflections as much as you want. And if you want, you can add roughness. What roughness means is that if the reflection gets a little blurred out, I like it usually, a little bit of roughness. Okay. Back to our scene. I'm gonna go a little bit further away to see it. So I'm taking the scene, clicking on scene here, going to the zoom button, and it will do something like this, which is nice. I can use the pan button and move it a little bit like this. And the rotate button, you can give it a nice rotation. Okay, let's go to this layer, make it black, and then add a new layer. And with the brush, I'm going to use, I'll disappear this part. I'm going to use a white, one click, 100% flow and opacity, and 0% hardness. This is what we'll come up with. Hold this layer, shrinking it something like this, something like this, and I'm going to duplicate the layer, Command J or Control J on a PC, make it bigger again, something like this, with a very low opacity, around 8%. Take this one and do something like this, maybe a little more. Okay, now let's turn back on the 3D layer. Okay, saving it is important always. So now let's go to environment and play with our studio to get the best reflections. You can move it around, rotate, to have something interesting. Some highlights, some cool highlights, maybe some lines of some softboxes reflecting on it could be very interesting. Let's take it like this. And the low, oh, that's it. Something like this is interesting. You can see the beautiful highlights and reflections. We can now lower the intensity of the light. As you can see, give you some beautiful golden metal here. Something like this. We'll do a quick render just to see how it's looking up. Hold on, first I will take this white layer and bring it back a little more so it will be on the base. Make it a little bit bigger so it will be on the base of our coin. So we can see the reflection and the shadow. So now we can take this thing, make a selection around it, and click on the render button right here. This is gonna take a while, but we are getting a beautiful render of this coin using only Photoshop.